Hey there, welcome to the Fun on Purpose podcast. I am Christopher Bruce, and luckily for you, I am not alone. The godfather of fun himself, Nick Gianoulis. How you feeling, man?
Great, man. Summertime, my favorite time of year.
It's a beautiful
Good
thing.
to be here.
I'll tell you something we've got going on. Frogs.
Frogs.
We have 7 frogs. My daughter, a 4-year-old daughter, and I
Yeah.
have been catching them. We built out a habitat. They've all got names.
I love it.
Frogs.
I love it.
All frogs, man.
I'm all about frogs. I had Freddie the Frog when I was a kid and carried
Solid
him around
name,
in my
good
pocket.
alliteration.
Yeah, he was like my best friend.
You would hold them around in your pocket.
Yeah.
Just walking around town with frog.
Yeah. Well, in the house. My mom didn't like him, jumping around, so I just put him in my pocket.
Dude, frogs are the best. We're having a lot of fun. And tadpoles metamorphosizing into frogs.
Ugh.
What's more fun than that? We're enjoying it. Today, we're going to have some fun as well on the show, connecting people. Human connection, something we all crave. And our guest is an expert in the field. He's been all over the world. He's going to be sharing his insights, and we're going to be digging in on that topic. Nick, are you ready?
I'm ready, man. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
I'm excited about this guest.
Let's do a thing. You're watching the Fun on Purpose podcast. All right, welcome once again to the Fun on Purpose podcast. Nick, we've got a really great show lined up and an awesome conversation ahead of us.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. And this guest, like I said, has traveled all over the world. You guys have a little bit of history, too. So talk a little bit about that real quick, if you can.
We do. So I had the pleasure and honor of working with Ron over the years and, kind of made an instant connection.
Yeah.
A really smart, wise man. In fact, he's known affectionately as the Owl. We'll get into that a little
must
bit
have a
more.
very flexible neck.
Right, yeah. And he's really smart.
Oh, nice. It's a good combo.
Yeah, so, and I think he adds a really unique perspective to the subject we're going to be talking about today because he's traveled all over the world and he's done a lot of work abroad, and I just think that just kind of expands his, perspective
man. I love,
and horizons. Yeah.
I think travel is one of the best things for
It
perspective,
is,
and I think
absolutely.
perspective is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves,
Yes.
right? So,
and he lives in Canada, which is also super cool, right?
all right.
He's Canadian, right?
Well, good.
So
It's
our-
nice
our
of him to
friends
come
in
out and
Canada.
about on our show and
Yes.
join us here today. Well, let me
Yes.
just give you his bio. I'm going to read it
All
so
right,
we
let's
can
do it.
kind of make sure
Get
you guys
the formal
understand
stuff out
how
of the way,
cool
right?
Ron is. But let me just read this for you, and we'll put up some cool graphics and show you some things along the way. But Ron Mandel is a facilitator and a coach with over 40 years of experience working with multinational and mid-sized companies across diverse sectors, including pharma, finance, healthcare, automotive, and high-tech in the U.S., Canada, Europe, Vietnam, China, and India. I mean, this guy's not messing around, I'm telling you. His impressive client list features renowned organizations such as Pfizer, GSK, Sallie Mae, Bank of Montreal, Michelin Tire, GM, and NASA.
NASA.
I mean,
To
that's
the
a
moon,
really
man.
solid one.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the moon and back
I
this
love
guy's
it.
going. Ron specializes in building values-based cultures and excels in creating environments where company values are actively lived and measured, fostering leadership that nurtures employee strengths and cultivates a trusting, innovative atmosphere. Ron is the author of High Purpose on Purpose. Gotta love that tie.
I like that tie in
And
too.
an all-around really good guy. So
Absolutely.
this is a great combination. And with that, Nick, are you ready to bring Ron in?
Let's bring him in.
I don't think we should wait any longer. Ron, come on and join us. How are you, man? Good to see you.
Great to be with you, and hopefully we'll be able to touch on some really relevant subjects that people are grappling with in today's crazy world, and some ideas that people can take away and use.
Yeah, no,
Perfect.
absolutely, Ron. That is the goal, right? We want to have relevant, thoughtful, meaningful conversations. And with that, we have rapid fire questions. We want to warm you up. We want to get you going just to kind of get the conversation rolling, maybe spark some fun, which we're the fun department. We're
Sure.
fun on purpose.
Let's
We
have
gotta
a little
bit
fun.
of fun.
Yep.
But then we're going to get into the real stuff. So, Ron, are you ready for a few questions? I'm going to throw some rapid fire fun questions at you. Are you ready?
Go for it.
All right, here we go. First one. You've traveled all over. Worst and best food you've ever eaten in your travels?
Well, I really like Vietnam. There's something about the quality of the people and the food, and there's street food, a lot of street food.
Nice.
I'm a vegetarian, so it's not hard to find that on the streets of Vietnam. So I would say that's kind of a highlight in many ways. A low light would be, these chains that everything is so bland, very predictable, boring. uh, and and the atmosphere also is, like the
Yeah.
streets are alive and there's a buzz and you feel great sitting on the streets, not just in Vietnam, Paris. Uh, I love that kind of energy. I really disdain sitting in a boring chain.
Yeah.
I'm with
Well,
you.
I
I'm
think
with
if you
you.
go to a
Yeah.
chain restaurant in
Yeah.
a foreign country, it's a miss, man. Like, come on. Enjoy where you are. You can
Absolutely.
have that really run of the mill mediocre food when you get home. Like, don't worry about that when you're out
Yeah.
traveling.
Yeah.
Like, get
Yeah.
the local stuff. I agree.
Right.
Another question for you. If you could live anywhere in the world based on your travels, where would you be?
Hmm. Bali, Thailand. There's something magical about the people as well. It's not just the beaches and this
Mm,
endless sun,
yeah.
but there's a calmness and a peacefulness in that of those people and in that area. I really like Southeast Asia.
And
Love
as you
that.
say, there's a calmness
I
and a
yeah. I
peacefulness.
could feel it.
I feel like you would fit in very well with that
I
calmness and
I could
peacefulness.
feel it.
So I love that. And one thing you and I talked about before is innately like people are creative. Can anyone, like, honestly, I talk to a lot of people and they're like, I'm not creative, but can anyone be creative?
I'll tell you, I want to answer that in a little different way. Not can they be, we are. It's not
Yes.
can we become creative as if it's something we need to move towards.
Hmm.
We all were. Think about children. Ask a
Mhm.
child, if any of you have kids, any 5-year-old, any question you ask them, they have an answer because they don't restrict, they don't stop themselves from,
Yeah.
from answering. We as adults learn, hey, that might not be the smartest thing to say, so I'm going to hold back. I actually have some data on that I can share with you that might be relevant on this.
All right. Well, let's get to that
Yeah.
data a little bit later. Let's
Yeah.
stick to the questions for now, but I love that. And you're right. I'm going to go ask my 4-year-old some questions when I get home because I love that. Now, if any color, and this is a fun one, if any color could spew out of your mouth when you talk, what color would it be?
Yellow. Uh,
Nice.
and do you want me to say
Subject.
why?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Why yellow?
Well, to me, there's something about sunshine. When I
Ooh.
see, the warmth and just the peacefulness of the yellow sun, something just comes over me. Sunset as well has a bit of orange in it, but there's that. Uh, Life doesn't have to be hectic and racing, and I think if we do things right, life can be very peaceful and successful. I think the two.
And you just see
I love
that
that.
you see that warm yellow
Yeah.
floating around. Oh, there's Ron.
We
There he
we,
is.
we recently
There's Ron.
met
There goes
in
Ron
Miami.
again.
We were both on vacation, and we serendipitously met, and of course we sat outside in the
Was
sunshine.
it? Did you see the yellow
I
coming
could
out?
feel
That's what
it. Yeah,
attracted
for
you, brought you
sure.
in.
Yeah,
I knew it.
yeah, it was great.
And all right, so here's another one. I know you've worked with NASA, so can you share any secrets? You got anything you can? Little insider info here.
One of the things that I found in organizations sort of around the world, they have, uh, if they have a purpose, it really makes a difference. One of the secrets, I'm not sure it's a secret, uh, that they shared with me, that when President Kennedy talked about a mission to the moon and they succeeded,
Hmm.
after that, NASA somehow lost its focus because it was very clear what they wanted to do: land a man on the moon, bring
Right.
it back successfully. Back then, it was a man, and so having a purpose beyond that and trying to reinvent themselves has been a real challenge for NASA. Uh,
Yeah, they're like, now what? And
Interesting.
it feels like, yeah,
Right.
they're just grasping at different ideas, but
Right.
there it was very clear.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's smart. All right, so last one, and then we'll get into the real conversation, even though this was very thoughtful and very insightful. So thank you. Have you been to the moon, and what kind of cheese does it taste like?
Well, what popped into my head is, who moved my cheese?
Of course.
So I think we've all been there where, how did we get here? Like, this wasn't the way it was supposed to play out. So sometimes we go somewhere and it isn't what we thought it was going to be, but then uh, we can look for what, the wonder that's there. It may not be cheese, but there's something there that's wonderful that may not be what we were looking for.
Yeah, and really,
I
what
love it.
is cheese anyway? Right.
Yeah, it's kind of cheesy.
Okay,
But
so-
those were the most thoughtful and interesting rapid fire questions.
Seriously.
Only Ron Mandel can
Unbelievable.
make that happen.
And
So well
in the
done.
moment.
Well
Thank you
done.
for just being so present in that. And with that, let's get back to this creativity aspect because you talked about people being innately creative. We are creative, and you said you had some statistics. So let's start our conversation by maybe digging into those.
Okay, thank you. Because to me, it's a really good starting point for this whole conversation because it's really reconnecting to the essence of who we are, the gift that we were born with. So this is a study that was done several years ago, but I think you'll get the data on it. So first of all, looked at percentage of creativity when they looked at people who were 5 and under, 98% creative. Like if you give a kid a stick, that can be many different things, from
Oh,
a
absolutely.
rocket ship, or they just play with it. Whereas when you get to be an 8-year-old, it's 32% creative, because hey, a rocket ship is one of those toys you give them, not a stick. And then when you get to 44-year-olds and older, the percentage of creativity is 2%. So it went from 98 to
Wow.
2%.
That
Now
That
hurts.
hurts.
That
well,
hurts. It's like a dagger.
hold on. That's because that's what I want to get at here. That's the stats. Why? So there's something very interesting. Number of laughs. A 5-year-old, 113 a day.
Mm.
A 8-year-old, 83. A 44-year-old and over, 11. If you go past a school, think about walk into a university and how quiet it is. Walk into a kindergarten, how loud it is.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
It's not because you get older and have nothing more to say, or nothing to laugh at. We start getting serious in life, and when we start getting serious, we lose that spark. And the last one is number of questions. Again, you have a 4-year-old, how many whys do
Yeah.
you get a day? 65 whys for a 5-year-old. An 8-year-old, 41 questions a day. A 44-year-old, 6 questions a day. We stop asking questions. We stop
Wow.
exploring. And it's not because we can't ask a question, but we've learned that that's a dumb question. Better not ask it.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
I can
Yeah.
remember many times when I started work, I had questions, but I didn't want my boss to know that I didn't know the answer. So I didn't ask the
Right.
question. Of course, I
Afraid to
still
ask.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
true. There's a lot of
Yeah.
social aspects to that, right? And
Yeah.
pressures and things that kind of leak in.
So
Yeah.
you change the environment, which we're going to get into
Mm.
in our conversation, through connections, through values. Uh, then people start opening up, and they open up to who they are, the innate gift that we all have. Not that we learn to become creative. We take away the blocks that stopped us from being creative.
Just get it back,
Yeah,
right?
it's really
Just get
about
it back.
reharnessing
Yeah.
your creative juice, right? As opposed to learning how to be creative. It's learning how to stop killing your creativity.
Yeah.
It's in
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. Seen it so many times
Yeah.
throughout our work. And Ron, I know you and I have shared that experience where, you just given the opportunity for, to an adult to be creative. It's amazing what they come up with. It
They just
just,
have to have the
yeah.
freedom, right? And they
Yes.
have to feel safe.
Yeah.
And the vulnerability just needs to wash away. You just gotta be able to go
Yeah.
and let be.
Yeah.
And that's what great leaders do.
Yes.
I use the word permission and protection. Give people
Okay.
permission to ask that dumb question, and then, boy, you better protect that group or that individual when somebody says that's a dumb question. How
Right.
you got to jump on the person who is putting a pin into that bubble.
No, and that's awesome. And Ron, you talk about getting comfortable enough to go there, and that's kind of what you're talking about, right? You're talking about setting an environment, creating a space
Mhm.
where individuals can feel free to be creative and to be themselves in a lot of ways, right? So maybe frame that for us a little bit more. What does it mean to get comfortable enough to go there?
Well, I think, and we all, I think, have had these experiences where you come into a space, and people either lecture at you, so you sit back and say, okay, that's one of the regular things. The teacher is the sage on stage model, uh, and that's not what life is like. That doesn't foster questioning and laughter and playfulness. That just sit back, take notes, and you're going to get tested somewhere down the road. Tested for what you
Yeah.
don't know, which is also another setup. So a safe environment. Uh, and we all try to do that. We do it at home, where where a kid falls down, and you're there in a second to pick them up and give them a hug or give them a kiss on their boo boo. I have a 2-year-old grandson that regularly asks for that. Uh, so in a business environment, it's not so different, because what's so as a simple thing. But there's a second piece to this that's important. If you come up with a set of ground rules, it'll take you 30 seconds in a meeting to ask, what's going to make this meeting effective. Now,
Right.
that's easy to do. Put it up on a wall. But if you just put it up on a wall, it's no different than coming up with a set of values and putting up on the wall. You have to hold people accountable for living those values or those ground rules in a meeting. So if somebody is living it, let's catch them doing things right. If they're not living it, we've got to remind them that that's not what we agreed to do. And the nice part about human beings is if you ask people, how do we want to behave in this meeting? Let's listen to each other. Let's be respectful. Let's give people space. Let's encourage people to participate. They'll say those things. But will they do those things? No, they'll say them, but that's their aspiration. So we need to then, when people are doing it, acknowledge them. That's great. We said we were going to
Yeah.
listen, and you're doing that. You said you
Praise
weren't going to interrupt, and that's great. You gave people the space. You pulled somebody in. Wonderful. And when somebody doesn't do those things, which was going to happen as well, you got to call it. Because if you don't call it, then why'd we bother? That's just the game you're playing. We put it up there and didn't know. It's no different. Um, I'm a sports fan, and
Sure.
if at the end of a game you're talking about the referee, is that a good or bad thing, and why?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it depends. I mean, I guess usually if they're doing their job, you're not thinking about them, right? Because it's just
Exactly.
innately a part of the game. If they're standing out, there's usually a reason for that, and it's usually not good.
Exactly. So what I'm getting at is that we're part of our job is to be a referee, and a referee means sometimes you have to pull a red card
Yeah.
in a soccer match, and eject somebody from the game, or a yellow card, or just a warning. But you got to blow the whistle sometimes because that was not appropriate, and you got to call it. And if you don't, bedlam.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's no different than in a meeting. If people are behaving appropriately, let them know. When they're not behaving appropriately, and that's why I say even coming up with a set of ground rules, this is the way we want to behave. When they're not behaving to the list that they said they wanted to behave to, you got to let them know they're not doing that. And that'll start saying, oh, it's safe here. I can ask a question. I can make a comment. I'm not going to get bullied or laughed at because someone's going to be there to ensure that we stay at a healthy level in our discussion.
Yeah, and I mean, if the ref's doing their job, but to your point, like, or the leader is doing their job, they're adhering to the rules that are established, agreed upon, and understood.
Right.
And as long as that's consistent and solid, then people tend to feel pretty good about that. And they're even like, you know what, you're right. All right, I stepped over the line on that one. That's on me. But thanks for reminding me. We're going to stay, keep the game moving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with that, you talk about the environment, right? And talk about creating an environment. We do this all the time when we're working with clients and trying to create safe spaces for play. But when you think about creating an environment, Ron, what are some of the aspects of that? What's important in terms of doing that well?
Well, one fundamental area that Nick and I were working on this was 8 years ago or so, and I've been doing this for the last dozen years, 14 years, building a values-based organization. And what that means is that let people speak to what are the values that we should be living by, get some
Yeah.
input on that. But once we come up with a set of values, we have to make them count for something. I remember when I worked with GSK many years ago, uh, they had a bonus structure, and they allowed the manager to give either 100% of that bonus tied to values, and there was some flexibility in that. In other companies, healthy companies, it might be 10, 20%, 30% tied to values of the person's performance. So values have to count. You can't just say, here's what we want you to live by, these values. And then if somebody doesn't live by the values, I was giving an example of the salesperson who might exceed their sales targets, but they don't help anybody else. They're not supportive of anybody else. They don't share ideas. In fact, they could be the opposite. They don't even attend, or they're the clown at the meetings, and they're still paraded as the employee of the month. You're undermining the culture of your organization. So you have to make it count. So how do you make it count? Somebody could have, let's say they did 120% of their target. So therefore they should be, get potentially a bonus or potentially get an outstanding rating. No, because up to a third, depending on what the organization establishes, a third of the rating should count on how that salesperson lived their values. If they didn't live the values, then how can you give them an outstanding rating? They may have still met their numbers,
Right.
but that's the what they did. How they did it, by collaborating, by supporting, by helping other
Yeah.
people. If they didn't do those things, then you got to let them know, and it should count. It hit their pocketbook, so that they're
Yeah.
not
Because
the outstanding employee. Because if they were a jerk, they shouldn't be paraded and rewarded.
they might have hit their numbers, but at what cost?
Right. I've seen it happen countless times throughout the years in organizations where, and in particular salespeople,
Yeah.
because they're easily measured, and when they hit their targets, everybody, loves them. But if they're not embodying, the values of the organization, it's a miss. It's really a miss. So.
Yeah, and it deteriorates it over time. I mean,
Yeah.
and you got to be really conscious of, like I said, at what cost?
Yes, right.
Because you may be hitting those numbers, but over time, it's
Right.
really going to make a negative impact on the organization and the direction and the goals
Yes,
and all that. So you got to be able to stay true to yourself and draw those lines and establish
I'll
and
give you an
keep
example of
true to it.
that for my daughter. When she started to work as a salesperson, she was working actually with Salesforce. She was new in the job, and she asked her boss, "How can I be better?" And her boss said to her, "You're really good at writing proposals, and I don't see you helping anybody else write proposals." And my daughter kind of fell out of her chair, like, I, "What's in it for me to help my colleague write proposals?" And I didn't even think it was my job to go and push myself onto anybody else to help them write proposals. But her boss was pointing out to her that you're good at this. Other people are good at other things. You help people this way, they'll help you in
Sure.
other ways.
Yeah.
And her boss facilitated that. So she said, "Look, when I see somebody struggling with a proposal, I'll mention it to you or I'll mention it to them so that the two of you can come together and you can help that person on writing proposals. And then later on, when you're struggling with somebody, I'll see somebody who's good at the other area that you're not as good at, and they'll help you." And that's how you develop a better culture where people look out for each other as opposed to, "Hey, I'm doing my thing. I work in my little silo, my little area. Just leave me alone." That's not the way a company grows. It's not how we grow individually either. We need people who support us to be able to see what we don't see and to benefit from their eyes and their perspectives and their expertise.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just a beautiful. That's a great team aspect, right? When
Yes.
we can lift each other
Yes.
up, look for the weaknesses, fill it in with strengths. All those things work together. We're just better for it in the end.
For sure.
And
And Ron, you've done so much work over the years with culture and values, and you've also done quite a bit of work with, purpose, higher purpose. In fact, you wrote the book on it, right?
Yeah.
So, higher purpose on purpose. So, tell us how higher purpose relates to culture and values and connections within the
yeah,
workplace.
it's a great question, Nick, and it speaks to perspective. When I started work, uh, my undergraduate was engineering, so I was a very linear kind of focused person. And purpose didn't mean like purpose was make a living, just pay your bills.
Right.
That seemed to be the
Right.
purpose and you have children and then the mortgages and that. But what I've learned over time is that there's a bigger picture to coming to work. There's a bigger picture to life. It's not life isn't about I paid my bills and I did the work I was supposed to do. Great organizations stand for something, and great people stand for something. They're not just making it through the day. And what's really cool is that when you get start that conversation, there's a reason why a great organization is great. They do something, make a contribution, and they allow people to be aligned to that contribution. Let me give you one example. I can give you several in healthcare. So way back when this was University Hospital in London, Ontario, they were doing transplants, heart transplants, and that was a big thing for those of you around. I don't know, it must be like 25, 30 years ago. It was front page news. So everybody, when there was a heart transplant in the hospital, was paying attention to it. 30 years later, it's mundane, and people are just doing it like they stitched somebody's hand from a cut. But there's a difference. An organ that's being transplanted, the timing is really key, and people were starting to lose their focus of being how important it was. So what they did is after the patient had recovered, the patient was happy to talk to a range of people who were all part of that process, not just the doctor who did the surgery, but the nurses and the operating room who did the cleaning in the operating room, and the security guards who helped the elevators keep them clear so the organ could get there quickly, and the ambulance driver. That they could see that what they were doing was not just a job in an ambulance or a job in security or a job cleaning the operating room, but there was a higher purpose to what they were doing. They were helping somebody stay alive.
Mhm.
Another example of that, uh, also in healthcare, is that a company that makes heart pacers. Every year when they have a conference, they bring in a patient who's alive because of that pacemaker in their heart,
Mm. Mm.
reminding everybody in the organization that you, in whatever part that you worked on here, you helped this person stay alive.
Right.
So you want to help people see that what they're doing in their job is more than just I push papers, I do IT, I'm in finance. No, you're part of something bigger. Um, but in really good organizations, take it one step further. They don't just help them see that; they allow them to be involved directly in some way, shape, or form to that higher purpose.
Yeah,
I
you
love
give
that.
them give them that context, that reminder, really paint the picture and show that the impact of what their part has. And it can be something as simple as restocking, the shelves for
Right.
some what seems like menial supply, but if that's not there
The
in
whole
this
system.
process, the next thing can't happen, which affects the next thing, which ultimately leads to the person's life being saved. It's
Right.
really kind of a
Yes.
cool thing to do.
And as an example, literally on that, I worked in a pharma company, and you asked the person in the warehouse what his job was, and he said, "I save people's lives."
That's
Love
awesome.
that.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah,
it.
Right.
man.
Right.
But and now it's very rare that they have to get this drug within 24 hours to a hospital. It may happen a few times a year, but he remembers those few times. He takes it very seriously. That it's his job to make sure it gets expedited really quickly because it's
Yeah.
going to save someone's life. The rest of his job may be just processing, shipping regular, prescriptions out
Yeah.
to the pharmacist, but help him see that what he does makes a difference. And for all of us, that you can do something from any kind of job, from fast food, could be connected to
Mhm.
uh, helping people who are struggling with food scarcity.
Yeah, you got to give people purpose and a reason to show up, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about giving them a reason
Yeah.
to show up and to know what when they do show up, it makes a difference, and
Exactly.
that they're a part of
Yes.
the overall thing,
Yeah.
man.
To
That's what
be
it's about.
purpose oriented instead of task oriented. And I think we put
Yeah.
so much emphasis on task, at
Well,
work and completing tasks that you forget what the big
well, and if you think
purpose is.
about that, you talked about that warehouse worker. If they went in thinking, well, I need to stack, I need to make sure the shelves are full, and that was their focus, they would get pretty bored. It would be mundane. It would be repetitive. It might even wear on them in a
Right.
way that isn't healthy. But if they know that they're going in there and their job is to save lives, that when they're not just putting stuff on shelves, they are setting up for
Right.
human beings to be able to survive.
Right.
That changes the scope and really the lens that they look through as they go and do those tasks.
Yeah.
And so if a grocery chain could be involved in taking some of the food that is no longer shelf worthy, but having
Yeah.
staff bring it to a food bank.
Yes.
There's another example. I work with a courier company, and one man started this, and now it's a campaign for this whole company. He was visiting this high school regularly, and he said, "What are you doing with the food?" And they said, "We throw it out." He said, "Well, I can bring it to a food bank. I'm
Right.
here every day. I'll do that." And he did that. He just took that initiative on his own. But
That's
now it's
awesome.
become a campaign for this
Mm.
whole organization to be able to get food. They're connected to football, where people bring food to cans, and they have the
Yeah.
collection service that picks it up and delivers it. So people feel that they're not just a courier driver; they're actually helping in some way, shape, or form uh, to distribute food.
And that's really a win-win for everybody, right? Because the organization benefits because
Mhm.
now there's a higher sense of purpose, and they're not wasting. They're looked at as something more environmentally conscious. So
Sure.
from a public perspective, that company is going to get a major boost
Right.
from that. Where in the past they would have just been discarding and throwing away all that material. So now they get the benefit of, well, now we're doing this good in the community. Look at this
Yeah.
initiative that we are helping fuel based on one person's connecting the dots and finding some purpose and saying, hey, man, what are we doing with this?
Right.
And asking a question, right? It all comes back to just asking questions. And we lose that over time, as you said, that as we get older, we ask less questions. So what a beautiful thing by just simply asking what is a
Right.
very simple question, what are you doing with that, turned into all of that. It's kind of cool.
That's what great leaders are all about. Is
Yeah.
we've been working long enough that you know I'm a war baby. Business was growing. You made more money just by showing up at work. But today, the generation today wants to have some meaning when they come to work. It's not just because they're going to be able to buy a house and pay off a mortgage. They may not even be able to buy a house. It's too expensive. They want to have more meaning at work. And I think it's
Yeah.
incumbent on leaders to create that environment for them that they feel that they're making some kind of difference. and let them
Sure.
spend some time doing that.
And Ron, you and I have spoken about this subject, post COVID, the disconnected workplace, right? Where so many people are working remotely,
Mm.
hybrid, at home, and losing that sense of connection to the company and the purpose, and to human beings, to each other. So you had, I thought, some great ideas about y- you know how, how to bring people back in a healthy way, right? How to bring people back into the workplace, and which is an intriguing subject for
Yes.
a lot of our clients I know are trying to figure that out. So if you would share some of that, that would
Yeah.
be
How do we
great.
bring people back, Ron? Lay it out for us. Paint a picture. Save
Another
us.
another loaded question, by the way, but
It goes back, I mean, in the title of the fun department, if work isn't fun, why am I going to come? Why am I going to show up? I'd better stay home. If I'm not going to have fun at work, and fun is a bigger word. It's not just play fun. A
right.
meaningful connection with a human being, with another human being, uh, is fulfilling, is
Yes.
nurturing. It's what
Yes.
human beings are. We're not designed to sit at home on a mountaintop or in front of Zoom cameras. We're designed to play. Look at what children do. We invent games. We need crowds of people, and we play off of it. We feed off of that. So if you use that as an example, you can't just say to people you're mandated to come into work, whatever it is, 3 days a week, you know 8 days a month. It doesn't matter if it's mandated. So I'll put a gun to my head, I'll show up, but that's not making it worthwhile for me to be there. I'll resent it, especially if I'm going to come to work and sit in front of my computer terminal anyways. Why do I need to come to work? I might as well stay home. So creating connections, creating experiences for people when they come to work. It doesn't mean the whole day, but giving them a reason. Something is going to happen, and it may be 30 minutes that day over lunch, but something planful. It needs to be created so that people can have some fun, meaning, connections, and then they say, "Oh, I know what I got by coming to work today." No different than all of us when we sit down with friends and have a meal and we have good conversation. We don't want to just have our food in front of us and everybody else sit in front of their own terminal and think that that's a good connection, because something happens. There's something magical about human beings when we're face to face with each other. We can read off some things. We can see that somebody is out of sorts. We can invite them in to a conversation. There's things that happen that only when you're face to face live, that magic can be opened
So
up.
true.
Yeah, and there's nothing really that kind of compares, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
Right.
nothing
It's
like
hard to
being
replace that.
together.
Right. Yeah.
And you can try to make virtual connections more interesting, more meaningful, and we do that.
Right.
But
Right.
it is still the best when you can get
Yeah.
people together.
So I think the responsibility of a leader, and I'll give you one simple example. It's
Hmm.
not rocket science stuff. Take 5 minutes in a meeting to do something different so people can connect. Give them a question that they can talk with one other person, or it could be a question that each person shares in the whole room. But if you want to take just 5 minutes, it's 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes each.
Yeah.
Give them a question, make it a meaningful question so that people won't, don't ask them about the weather or about politics. That's going to cause grief. But, a simple question about who's had the biggest impact in your life and why. Um,
Hmm.
Share that with a person. That creates a space for somebody to be personal, to be able to
Hmm.
learn a little bit about another person.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that kind of experience, I'll tell you a story about that I found, fascinating. That I did this exercise. We call it personal emotional connections. I like the three words. It's personal because
Hmm.
connecting over you know uh, you know just the weather is not really a connection.
It's pretty surface, right? It's not. It doesn't
Yeah,
really get you anywhere.
exactly, and it should be emotional. It's something that tears at your own heartstrings and tells you something, and it creates a connection between people. So I did the same example of uh, what's one of the best days of your life. Tell that story to somebody, and these and we were 500 people in the room, and I did it 3 times. They just went to somebody random, and spent 5 minutes again. So the whole thing, that exercise, was 15 minutes long.
Hmm.
And I'm saying in a meeting, it could be 5 minutes of a meeting.
Yeah.
Uh, And then, they had the conversation. I could hear the energy in the room because people were sharing. Now,
Yeah.
95% of the people were really, open and authentic. There's a few people who didn't, or maybe were reluctant. But if the majority are in that buzz sharing, it's successful.
Yes.
The person came to me afterwards. He was a doctor, and he said, "I've been doing rounds with a physician for 8 months, every morning from 6:30 to 7:15. I've never spoken to the person about, I don't know nothing about this person. I mean, other than his medical expertise." He said, it dawned on him that there's a human being here that I'm doing rounds with.
Yeah.
I've never taken the time to connect with this person. He said, "I'm going to take this guy to breakfast at 7:15 and the next day,
That's
and I'm going to
awesome.
ask him a couple of these questions."
That's great.
That
That's
is, I
great.
mean, what a great thing. And a nice wake up call, right? Just a little light went off. And it's like, I have an opportunity to make a connection. I crave connection. I'm a human being. That's
Right.
what we love. And we
Right.
really do enjoy connecting with each other. And isolation it weighs on you after a while.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And we find that all the time when we do shared experience exercises,
Yeah.
where people that have worked together for 20 years, will comment that, "Oh my God, I've worked with this person
I
all
didn't
this
know
time
you
and had no
also
idea."
loved
Right,
knitting
right,
or whatever
right,
it
right.
is.
Yes.
It doesn't,
Right.
like, wait, you also collect frogs?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Who knew?
Yeah.
And your
And it's,
childhood story about your father, and you were mentioning that earlier, whatever comes
Yeah.
up, it now
yes.
Yeah.
becomes another thread in a bond that, if it's very weak, then
Right.
people are going to leave. Then we're like,
Right.
I can go and apply for another job and work somewhere else and make the same money and work on Zoom. Then
There's no connection.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what's at risk in this post-COVID world more than anything, is that people can leave if you don't have committed employees and you're not doing anything to get them committed. They're going to leave, and
Right.
and it's going to be your best staff who are going to leave, because the worst ones are going to stay.
Right.
Yeah.
They're the ones who can easily get another job. And if you're
Right.
not doing anything to build those bonds for those people, they're not learning and growing. That's another whole theme of of helping people to see a future for them. Then why would they stay? And it's the responsibility. I'm saying 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was a job and you were staying, and people stayed for a long time. Now it's easier than ever to leave, because you can work remotely for the company in another part of the world. Literally, I have a cousin who's working in Japan because he's married to someone Japanese, working for a company that's based in the United States, living totally in Japan. Um, so that's the world we're in.
Right.
Now they do something twice a year. They fly everybody together so that they actually do have the physical connections and get to know each other in ways that.
Yeah, a lot of companies are kind of finding opportunities to embrace the hybrid work schedule, but still make a priority to get people together
Yes.
at key points during the year. And I think that is a rhythm we're seeing more of.
No doubt.
And, we can't be, you can't fool ourselves into thinking that hybrid isn't a thing. Like, people are going to work
for real.
remotely. It's
Yeah.
part of the rhythm at this point. But you still need to make those connections.
Right.
Otherwise, as you said, there will be no connection. There's no reason, to stay. You're not really feel like you're a part of anything.
Right.
It's just a thing. It's just a job. It doesn't have the sticky connective tissue. You don't have the relationships with your coworkers or the team or the brand. None of that matters.
Right.
So making those connections really do go a long way.
Absolutely, that and then overlay that with a higher purpose, and that's why I had the title On Purpose. Like, it's not just okay. We
Yeah.
have purpose as a tagline, and the corporate affairs gives money to some charity that we think is wonderful. That's not that's doesn't get people directly involved. So when you do those two things, give us something that that we stand for as an organization that you are part of.
Yeah.
Excuse me, and allow people genuine connections with other people, and they learn to be able to see themselves growing in their talents and skills. Now you got a formula that people are going to want to stay.
That's great.
Yeah.
And, we often ask our guests to present something practical and easy for, our audience to try on,
Yeah.
as a result of our conversation. And Ron, you did just that, like just making those simple connections take 5 minutes,
Right.
In a meeting. Everybody's in a meeting.
Yeah, you got plenty of chances, right?
Right,
I mean,
there's
anytime
lots
you
of
get the group
opportunities.
together, whether it's in person or on, a virtual kind of setup, just
Right.
make a priority to just take a few minutes
Yeah. Yeah.
and ask some questions, make that a part of the rhythm, and create those connections, right? I mean, is that what you suggest people try to do, Ron? Ultimately, is that one of the things that they can do at home to?
I'll give you another one, but absolutely
Oh, good.
that's
Great. Great.
giving people a chance to be able to make those connections, human connections with another person that, as you said, you'll discover lots of
Yeah.
unique things about that person. I appreciate them. The last one I wanted to share here is, and I'm going to give you some stats to
Oh, good. Nick
back.
loves his
I do
stats.
love
Loves his
statistics, I have to
stats.
say.
It's called Gratitude at Work Findings, and it's the
Ah.
gratitude gap. So here's something that I found pretty shocking in terms of the numbers. So expressing gratitude to colleagues makes me feel happier and more fulfilled. 88% say yes to that. I find it
Okay.
seems surprising it's only 88.
Boom. Right.
But that makes sense. So, people say if people appreciate what I do, notice what I do and appreciate it, it makes me feel happier and more fulfilled. Got it.
Mhm.
But now the gap is look at the stats on what actually happens. That's what people are saying, that they feel good when they're acknowledged and appreciated. Only 10% express gratitude to their colleagues daily. And
Mm.
60% say they never express gratitude at all, or maybe once a year. So you've got 88% saying, I love it when I get it. And you have 60% who never do it virtually.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's a
Wow.
huge missed
Gap.
opportunity. So
Yes.
another example is if I've had this, I did this in New York at a large organization, and people were in tears. And what we were doing is saying, I want you to look around the room. There's somebody in this room who you're grateful to. They helped you somewhere in your career, in a meeting, in a project. I want you to express that. And there were some
Mhm.
people who, they were given an opportunity. It was a retail organization that, that somebody was, you know, first entry job working on the floor. Somebody saw them as having some talent and gave them some confidence, gave them some opportunities, and that person was in the room, and that person was, both were in tears, like they didn't realize the impact they had on that person and their lives, how it changed because of the support they've given them. But giving people an opportunity to express appreciation, and it's the same thing back to what I started off as a facilitator. You need to give people permission to do that. They're not. No
Right.
one would come into a room and say, "Hey, I got an idea. I'd like to express appreciation." That's not like people are going to look at you and roll their eyes, like, "Where did you come from?" Um,
Right.
that's not what we do. We're here because we have a project to work on, and we need deadlines. We need to hear, give me updates. No, we can take 15 minutes in a meeting, not every time, but if that happens once every few months, express appreciation. Um,
Right.
and what that does for people, because it's double. The person who's expressing it will feel good too,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
Mhm.
I noticed that you've done good things, and I've never told you. I want to tell you that I noticed
Yes.
some things, and the person who's receiving it, they might have said, I never knew that you cared, or that was important.
Right. That's a great,
So true.
yeah, great example.
But the leader of a meeting can easily do that. You're the leader who sets the agenda, says, this meeting we're going to take 15 minutes to do some appreciation.
Right.
No, that's great. And
Right.
you also talked about that permission to play, which we really appreciate. We always tell
For
people
it
that
all starts there.
it all starts kind of there, and the leadership has to be the one to set the tone, the
Yes.
leadership buy-in,
Yeah.
and a lot of our principles that kind of come back to that. So I love that what you're talking about is giving these individuals that permission to play, setting up the environment,
Mhm.
creating a
Mhm.
safe space, and really allowing people to be themselves unapologetically, so that that creativity and the connections and all of the great things that come with it can flow.
Right.
And I want to highlight something you just touched on because it's so important about the leadership. Not just the
Yeah.
leader creating the space for it, but modeling it. So if a
Yeah,
Yes.
for
leader and
sure.
anybody who's listening to this, if they're going to uh, suggest doing an appreciation exercise, they should go first, and they should have
Yeah.
thought it through because they're the ones who they're further ahead than anybody else because they've been able to think about it. But
Right.
make it real, make it meaningful. Because if they're setting the
Yeah.
bar, if they say thank you for bringing some cookies last week, that's a pretty low level.
Yeah,
Bar.
you can do better,
I
leader.
could
I'm
do
just gonna say
better.
you can do better than that.
Yeah.
Make it
Yeah.
more meaningful than just the cookies they brought.
Well, I'm saying the leader needs to do that because if a
Yeah.
leader sets a tone of something that's really deep, that was that
Yeah.
they were touched by that uh, that example that they're sharing, other people now have permission to be heartfelt as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I think that's so big. It's such a big deal. And to your point, that person has time to do it right, to set that tone, to set the bar, and to show the others in the group how to do it and to
Exactly.
make it easier for them to feel comfortable
Yeah.
to do it as well.
Yeah, and while we're on that subject, I'll just make this note because I think it's really interesting that so Chris does this really well, and it's very sincere. He does it with just about anybody we come in contact with, and in our personal conversations and at work and so forth. But he'll say, "I appreciate you" at the end of a conversation or at the end, of a meeting. So it's not I appreciate that or I appreciate something about, but I appreciate you, which is so much more powerful, right? Just changing that one word.
Mhm.
So I've always admired it. I think it's
Yeah.
cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's one of those things I guess I inherently, I don't even think about it. It's just, yeah, that's interesting.
Keep doing it, man.
Apparently I do
It's
that.
great. And it
it's
has an
good.
impact.
No, I mean, but that's just,
yeah,
I
it's
just
great.
genuinely like to be in the moment there. So that's really cool. So Ron, you were saying you had some amazing thought you were about to share.
Well, what we're touching on here is leadership. And
Yeah.
I like, even that word leading. Leading means we're going somewhere and you know where you want to go. And if you want to
Mhm.
build a team that's high performing and you want to build a team that people feel committed to and see themselves as part of that and want to contribute, then you need to do something to make that happen. Chaos
Yeah.
comes for free. You bring people together. You're not going to necessarily get a high performing team just because you brought talented people together. You could have a
Right.
lot of backstabbing and naysayers. That it's a conscious effort that leadership needs to take, and that to me is where when I think about the fund department, you bring structure, you bring processes to help people participate, create exercises and activities,
Yeah.
and structure is what makes us be successful. You can't drink from a fire hydrant. You need some structure to get a cup in there to be able to get a
I had
glass.
a buddy in college who thought he could
Could do
definitely
it.
drink
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
fire
A
hydrant.
friend of yours,
Oh
right?
yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt. He was pretty darn close to pulling it off. But I think you're right. You get the point.
I know a guy.
So if leaders are listening here, I think that reflect on not just the tasks that you're managing to get accomplished and through other people. Sure, that's your job, but
Mhm.
recognizing these are human beings, not just human doings. And that's why
Mhm.
when you say I appreciate you, and then
Yeah.
and then be clear about what you're appreciating that person for,
For
you're touching them at a soul level, at a heart level, and that's what people want and need in life. We're not
Mhm.
just doing things and get paid for doing. Um, even my garage mechanic who I've known for 25 years, I have a relationship with him, and I know about his family. And he loans me his car. I've even loaned him my car so he can take his grandson. It's a
Mhm.
convertible. There's a relationship there.
yeah,
Sure, he has to
that's
do his
great.
job of being honest and fixing my car, but beyond that, we have conversations that make it. I look forward to seeing him. He looks forward to seeing me. It's not that's just
Mhm.
an off.
Mhm.
That's not a regular kind of person.
Yeah. Well, it comes
Nonetheless,
back to those human connections, and you're making one a genuine connection
Yeah.
in that. And really, what you've recognized is that it's an opportunity to make another connection because you could just go let the guy fix your car, say thanks, and then go
Pay your
home.
bill and go home.
You don't have to ask some of those questions and open up the connection
Mhm.
element,
Mhm.
right? But it feels much better and the experience is more rich and fulfilling for both of you in that process because one, they feel more appreciated, they're more valued, and you're being human together. It's a beautiful thing.
and so as a leader, looking for ways to make that happen, looking for ways that make people feel important, feel appreciated, feel that they're making a difference, being part of something bigger than just pushing paper around or
Yeah.
keystrokes. That's the job I think of a great leader.
Mhm.
Yes, you'll get your job done, the tasks that have to be done, but how people work together, uh, that's the magic. People could be amazing in terms of how they work and play together and they have a lot of fun and really feel that they're making a difference, and they can also feel that they're in jail and it's they can't wait to get out of
Yeah.
jail and sort of thank goodness it's Friday because I have 2 days where I don't
Punch
have to
out. Yeah.
suffer.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's the
I
role of the
mean,
leader.
no, it's good. And I'd much rather choose the one where you want to be there and you enjoy the environment and you're not necessarily racing to get out.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying sort of almost in summary here is that pre-COVID, and certainly 20, 30, 40 years ago, you could have a dedicated workforce just by giving them a decent paycheck. People
Yeah.
were happy to come to work and have a decent job. That's no longer the case. And I think that's good news, not bad news. I think it's good because now you have to leaders, organizations have to step up. They have to step up with a higher purpose. They have to step up with values. They have to step up with recognition. They have to make people feel appreciated and noticed for the good that they're doing. They need to be coached when they make mistakes so people can learn. It's not like this isn't just uh,
Yeah.
all lollipops and candy. There's
Right.
in that it's also some hard conversations, but the hard
Yeah.
conversations are about helping somebody get better. If they're
Yeah, how dare you want us to be better, right? How dare you make us drive us all to be better? It's a good thing, like you said. I think it is different. It is maybe in some ways more challenging, but it's not necessarily. I mean, change is good if you just have to embrace it.
Yeah.
And these new things that we've uncovered that make our lives richer, fuller, and better are just another example of us evolving and understanding the value of those things. They just didn't value it before.
Right. And interestingly enough, this is work that Ron's been doing for
Yeah.
so many years. And, you know, COVID didn't change the work that you do. It's just the circumstances now. And maybe you're just ahead of your time, Ron, because, you know, you've believed it, you know, with your heart that this is really, and a lot of data to support it, but, you know,
Yeah.
that this is really the way, you know, to run a great organization. And, you know, I applaud you for it. It's you know, it's awesome and more timely than ever.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if we had to wrap up on, you know, one note, is there
Yes.
anything else that you'd want to impart on the audience today?
Yeah, the
Words of
wise
wisdom?
owl. Give us your final words of wisdom.
No
Thank you.
pressure.
Uh, well, I just want to kind of pick up the theme you were just touching on, that in terms of you can learn some technology. There's some new software. There's some AI. There's lots of stuff that you can learn that helps you in a technical way. But I'm talking about something that's a different kind of learning. In other words, if your spouse, your children notice that you've learned something, call it listening, call it caring, call it being more empathetic, they're going to notice it. It's that kind of learning I'm talking about that makes people feel special and makes an organization, a team, and an organization be special. And
Mhm.
that's what's being called for in a post-COVID world. So it's not just, hey, I'm going to set up a training course for you so that you're going to get better at some technology that you need in order to do your job. Sure, you need that.
Right.
And we'll do safety training. Sure, you need to have some safety training. But what we're talking about here is opening your heart, getting people to be able to learn. We all have things that we came into this world to learn, and the organization can help that person become a better, more effective human being. That to me is sort of when I feel that at the end of my day of work or the end of a project or at the end of life, to recognize that some people have been touched in a way that not that they can do their job better, but they can be a better human being, and then they'll do their job better too. So that's the opportunity space I feel for this new generation that are asking and begging for meaning in their life, not just
Mm.
technical stuff and escapism through your smartphone. Human connections and
Yeah.
deeper connections and growing and being a better human being because of it.
That's great.
Well, we appreciate you
Yes.
being on the show. We appreciate all the wise words and the insights and just sharing from your experience. And maybe next time I'll ask you how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. That was probably a missed opportunity on my point, but we'll get to that now. I'm not gonna. You don't have to answer it today. Maybe next time. Nick, I mean, Ron, what a magical human being. This is what
Always.
we should all aspire to just
Exactly. He's my hero.
be this
right?
genuine and
Yeah.
this authentic, and that's what
Yes.
it's about, man. It's about
Yes.
making real, authentic connections.
Yeah.
Human connections.
So Ron, we love you. We, you know, big fans. How can our audience get in touch with you? What's the best way
Yeah.
to reach out to Ron Mandel?
Well, I mean, I think that your connections to the fund department. That's when we're starting. Let them reach out to you at the fund department, and we'll connect through that. And I'm happy to share ideas and suggestions. I'm passionate about this because I really do believe that I'm very optimistic about the future. I think
Yeah,
that
me too.
the direction we're talking about of people being more humane to each other, being more caring to one another, it's what the world needs, and businesses can be a driver for that. So let them reach out to you through the fund department so that we can stay in touch
We'll
and see what emerges from that.
we'll be happy to
That's great.
facilitate the connection. And Ron, you're way too humble to promote your book, but I'm going to do it for you. If you wouldn't mind holding up a copy of your book, because I found it super insightful, very, very, very helpful. So higher purpose, on purpose. Any leader, anybody could, read this
Pick
book,
up
but
a copy
leaders
for
in
yourself.
in
Do
particular.
yourself a favor.
Yep.
There it is. Higher purpose, on purpose.
Yeah.
Ron Mandel. You can look it up. Ron, it's really been a pleasure. Thanks again for coming on. And Nick, another show.
It's great.
Hopefully we're helping people. That's what it's about. But we're having fun on purpose. And we look forward to continuing to do that. Ron, stay awesome. And we'll talk to you here soon.
Cheers to more fun ahead.
Thanks again.
I mean, well, Nick, there you have it. Another great episode. Human connections, something we all crave, something we all need.
Right.
And the more meaningful connections we have, the better our lives really are, right? I mean,
Sure. It's like the core or essence of everything that we do. So Ron so eloquently,
Yes.
presents the case for human connection, and it was awesome.
Well, the wise owl really laid some good stuff on us. And I love this thing, simple. And if you go back to the beginning of the episode, you talk about just the fact that as we get older, we ask less questions.
Yes.
That is so telling
Sad.
and sad. It's like really eye-opening, actually.
Right.
And I think that it's something that we can change pretty easily
Yeah.
if you just make a point to question
Right.
and don't just take it as is or give up on caring.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
just
And it's shifts, it's things that you can do. You're in
Yes.
control of. And thankfully, we laugh a lot more than 11 times a day.
For sure.
So we do our part, I got to say.
But
right?
I
We
can
do.
tell you, with having a 4-year-old in the house, she is a giggle machine.
Giggle machine, and she asks lots
And she does. She has lots of questions. And so when he was saying that, I was like, you are so on point.
Yeah.
Because it's just true. Like,
Yes.
laugh all the time. I mean, she would literally laugh all day long if she could.
Right.
That's her preferred mode of communication, just
Sure.
laughter and just funny
So
engagement.
refreshing.
And just asking questions, but not just like, well, why? But I mean, why is in the nature of it,
Right.
but it's thoughtful and like
Yes.
they're just curious.
Right,
And that
right.
curiosity leads us to really profound things. And it's what makes, invention possible and new ideas and,
Yes.
concepts that can come from that. It's very simple.
Yep.
Ask questions
Yep.
and that leads to new results.
Yeah. And Ron just shared some great insights
Yeah.
and some helpful tips,
For
on
sure.
things that you can do just in 5 minutes in a meeting to, make those connections and make the workplace more human.
Ah.
And in the end, that's really what keeps people.
Yeah, I mean, I might be
on
wearing a
board.
robot pickle shirt, but human
Yes.
connections are really much more fun.
Exactly.
Robot
Although-
pickle connections are pretty fun too.
Although that shirt will conjure some questions and conversation that will lead to a human
yeah,
connection.
well, and the
So
shirt
it's all-
came from kind of just some
Right.
fun.
Exactly.
I was just playing around. I'm
Exactly.
obviously, involved
I
with
know the
the
history,
big
yeah.
deal and all that. But I had a buddy of mine who's got a t-shirt shop and he's
Yeah.
a really great artist.
Yeah.
And being in that world, I started looking and thinking about, well, what would be if I were to create a brand for pickles? What would that be? And robot pickles was one of the fun ones that we came
I
up
think
with.
you nailed it.
And I was like, yeah, that is fun. I think that is fun. So anyway, that's all it is for now. But who knows? Maybe it'll turn into something else. But
Awesome.
Nick, a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
as
And appreciate
always.
you.
I appreciate you too, man. And it's the vibe. This guy's one of the most genuine human beings on the planet. So I love that about you and appreciate just what we're able to do here together. So thank you guys for tuning in to Fun on Purpose. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you thought about this
Yeah, I'd
episode.
love to hear about it.
And if
Yeah.
you have suggestions about conversations you'd like us to have and even potential guests,
Yes.
throw them our way. Put them in the comments. Send us some insight, some fun, some thoughts, and keep tuning in. We appreciate you. This is the Fun on Purpose podcast.
Cheers to more fun ahead.
Yes. I love it.